The perfect project that hid a coming war. At first, nothing about this project looked dangerous. It was supposed to be emotional, inspiring, and powerful. A best-selling novel about love, pain, and survival finally coming to the big screen. Blake Lively was attached as the star. Justin Baldoni was both director and co-star. On paper, it looked like a perfect collaboration. Two respected Hollywood figures, one deeply emotional story, a production built on trust, vulnerability, and creative intimacy. But what the audience did not see was the tension quietly forming behind the camera. According to multiple sources, the atmosphere on set slowly shifted. What began as professional collaboration allegedly turned into discomfort, confusion, and unspoken conflict. Small moments that felt insignificant at the time would later become central to a legal war that shocked Hollywood. Blake Lively is not just an actress, she's a brand, a public figure carefully associated with control, elegance, and stability. Married into one of Hollywood's most powerful couples, she's known for choosing her projects carefully. When she commits, it is because she believes in the vision. Justin Baldoni carries a very different reputation. Known publicly as a vocal advocate for emotional openness, masculinity reform, and respectful storytelling, he built his image on empathy and awareness. That is why what came next stunned so many people. Because when accusations emerged, they directly contradicted everything the public believed about him. Sources claim that during filming, Blake began to feel increasingly uncomfortable with certain interactions on set. The line between performance and personal space allegedly became blurred. What some described as method acting, others reportedly experienced as inappropriate behavior. At the time, nothing was said publicly. Productions often move quietly, even when tension exists. No one wants to be labeled difficult, especially not when millions of dollars and reputations are on the line. But silence does not erase memory. After filming wrapped, the pressure did not disappear. Instead, it followed the project into post-production, press planning, and internal conversations. According to legal filings, what had been unspoken during filming would soon be put into writing. Then came the moment that changed everything. Blake Lively filed a lawsuit. The accusations were serious, the implications devastating, and the response was immediate. Justin Baldoni denied the claims and struck back with a countersuit alleging defamation and reputational destruction. What was once a film adaptation had now turned into a courtroom battle, with careers hanging in the balance. Hollywood was forced to confront an uncomfortable question. How could a project built on sensitivity and emotional truth collapse into a legal war this explosive? And more importantly, who was telling the truth? In the next part, we break down the exact allegations, what Blake claims happened on set, and why this lawsuit sent shockwaves through the industry. The allegations that changed everything. When the lawsuit became public, the tone around the project shifted overnight. What had once been promoted as a story about healing and survival was now being discussed as a possible example of everything the industry claims it wants to fix. According to the legal filing, Blake Lively alleged that during production there were repeated moments where professional boundaries were crossed. She claimed that certain interactions made her feel uncomfortable and pressured, and that concerns raised internally were not addressed in a way that protected her sense of safety on set. At the center of the allegations was the idea that emotional intimacy required for the scenes allegedly bled into personal behavior. What one side described as commitment to authenticity, the other framed as behavior that crossed a line.
The lawsuit suggested that the environment on set made it difficult for Blake to speak freely without fear of backlash. Productions move fast, and power dynamics matter. When a director is also a co-star, authority becomes complicated. What shocked many observers was not only the nature of the claims, but who they were aimed at. Justin Baldoni had built a public identity around empathy, respect, and emotional intelligence. His platform focused on redefining masculinity and advocating for healthier relationships. That contrast made the accusations feel even heavier. Almost immediately, Justin denied the claims. In his response, he stated that the allegations were false, misleading, and damaging. He argued that any interactions were professional, consensual, and taken out of context. Then came the countersuit. Justin accused Blake of defamation, claiming that her lawsuit caused irreparable harm to his reputation, career, and future projects. According to his filing, the accusations created a public narrative that painted him as something he insists he is not. Now the battle lines were drawn. On one side, an actress claiming she felt unsafe and unheard. On the other, a director claiming his name and life work were being destroyed by allegations he says are untrue. The Hollywood industry watched closely because this case was no longer just about two people. It was about how Hollywood handles power, consent, and accountability when there are no witnesses, only interpretations. Social media exploded. Some users immediately supported Blake, pointing to long-standing issues of women being silenced on set. Others defended Justin, arguing that public accusations without a verdict can permanently ruin lives. The film itself became collateral damage. Marketing plans stalled. Public appearances were questioned. A story meant to inspire was now inseparable from controversy. And behind the noise, one critical question remained unanswered. What evidence exists beyond personal testimony? Because the next phase of this legal war would focus not on feelings, but on messages, emails, timelines, and witnesses. And that is where the case would either strengthen or collapse. In the next part, we examine the evidence, the responses from insiders, and how Hollywood began quietly choosing sides. Evidence, power, and the quiet shift in Hollywood. As the legal battle moved forward, the conversation changed. This was no longer just about accusations and denials. It became about proof. And in Hollywood, proof rarely looks like security footage or clear witnesses. It looks like messages, emails, meeting notes, and the memories of people who were present but silent. Legal teams on both sides began preparing what they believed would define the narrative. For Blake Lively, her case focused on documenting patterns rather than single moments. Her legal strategy reportedly emphasized context, repeated discomfort, and internal communications that suggested concerns were not resolved. According to sources familiar with the filings, her team referenced emails and conversations where boundaries were discussed and where she allegedly expressed unease. These were not explosive documents on their own, but together they were presented as evidence of an environment that failed to protect her. On the other side, Justin Baldoni built his defense around intention and reputation. His legal team argued that nothing in the communications demonstrated misconduct. They framed the interactions as professional, collaborative, and misinterpreted after the fact. They also pointed to the absence of formal complaints during production, no reports filed at the time, no shutdowns, no third-party intervention. To them, this was proof that the situation was being reframed through hindsight and media pressure. And this is where Hollywood began to split, quietly. Not publicly, not in statements, but in distance. Invitations slowed, conversations stopped, meetings were postponed. Studios do not choose sides loudly, they choose them with silence. Some industry figures privately expressed support for Blake, emphasizing the importance of believing women when they speak about discomfort. Others worried about the precedent of reputational damage before a verdict. The film itself remained frozen in uncertainty. Cast members avoided interviews, publicists redirected questions. What should have been a celebratory press cycle became a liability calculation. Behind the scenes, legal experts noted how difficult cases like this are to win definitively. Without clear physical evidence, juries are asked to evaluate credibility, power dynamics, and plausibility, and those judgments are shaped by cultural context as much as facts. This was not just a trial of two people, it was a reflection of an industry still struggling to define where.
In the next part, we follow the case into the courtroom itself, where strategy, emotion, and reputation collide under oath, and where one decision could change everything. Inside the courtroom, where narratives collide. When the case finally moved into the courtroom, the spectacle shifted from headlines to testimony. This was no longer about social media reactions or public opinion. This was about language, precision, memory, and credibility. Each side entered with a different story to defend. Blake's legal team focused on atmosphere rather than isolated incidents. They described a pattern of discomfort, subtle pressure, and moments where professional lines allegedly blurred. In court, they emphasized how power dynamics operate quietly, especially when the director also shares the screen. They argued that silence during production did not equal consent, that fear of retaliation, fear of being labeled difficult, and fear of damaging a major project often keep concerns unspoken until it feels safe to speak. The defense countered that framing piece by piece. They questioned timing, they questioned consistency, they highlighted positive interactions behind the scenes, and pointed to messages that appeared friendly, collaborative, and professional. They argued that regret and reinterpretation after the fact cannot be treated as misconduct, that creative intensity should not be confused with inappropriate intent, and that careers should not be destroyed based on subjective perception alone. Witnesses were called. Crew members, producers, and insiders offered recollections that did not always align. Some remembered tension, others remembered nothing unusual. And in a case like this, contradiction does not clarify, it complicates. The courtroom atmosphere was heavy, not dramatic, no explosive moments, no viral outbursts, just careful wording, long pauses, and the weight of knowing that every sentence could shape public legacy. Legal experts following the case noted how evenly matched it appeared. No smoking gun, no definitive proof, just two opposing realities asking a jury to decide which felt more believable. Outside the courtroom, the industry waited, not anxiously, but cautiously. Studios hate uncertainty, and nothing freezes momentum faster than unresolved controversy. The question was no longer who would win the case. It was what the verdict would say about the culture Hollywood is trying to become. In the next part, we reach the moment everything hinges on, the verdict, the aftermath, and how both lives changed the second the decision was read. The verdict, and the moment everything changed. When the jury finally returned, the room fell into a silence that felt heavier than any argument made during the trial. This was the moment both sides had been preparing for and fearing, because no matter the outcome, nothing would return to how it was before. The verdict did not deliver a clean victory. It rarely does in cases like this. Instead, it delivered a ruling that acknowledged complexity rather than certainty,
Some claims were dismissed, others were allowed to stand, and the message was clear. This was not a story with heroes and villains, it was a story with consequences. For Blake Lively, the ruling validated that her concerns deserved to be heard in a courtroom, not dismissed behind closed doors. While it did not confirm every allegation, it affirmed her right to speak about discomfort without being silenced by power or image. For Justin Baldoni, the outcome was devastating in a different way. Even without a full legal condemnation, the damage to reputation was real. In Hollywood, perception often moves faster than verdicts. Projects paused, conversations stopped, and the man once praised for emotional leadership now faced a future defined by caution. The aftermath unfolded quietly. No victory speeches, no dramatic press conferences, just carefully worded statements from legal teams and a noticeable absence from public view. The film itself remained suspended between art and controversy. Some distributors reconsidered involvement, others delayed decisions indefinitely. A story meant to explore love and survival became a case study in how off-screen conflict can eclipse on-screen intention. For the industry, the verdict sent a chilling signal. Accountability does not require certainty, and silence no longer guarantees safety. Actors, directors, and producers took note. Training policies were revisited. Intimacy coordination became non-negotiable. Power structures were questioned in ways that had long been avoided. But change comes slowly, and often only after damage has already been done. Both lives moved forward, but not equally, one with cautious vindication, the other with irreversible doubt. And yet, the most uncomfortable truth remained. The courtroom did not reveal absolute truth. It revealed how fragile reputation is in an era where stories travel faster than facts. In the final part, we examine what this case will ultimately mean for Hollywood culture, public trust, and the future of celebrity accountability. What this case leaves behind. When the courtroom doors closed, the story did not end, it simply changed shape. Hollywood has always been built on illusion. Perfect images carefully protected, conflicts quietly managed, problems resolved before they ever reach the public. But this case shattered that pattern, not because it delivered a dramatic verdict, but because it exposed how fragile the system really is. For years, the industry relied on silence as a solution. Silence from actors who feared being labeled difficult, silence from crews who did not want to lose work, silence from studios that preferred risk management over confrontation. This case disrupted that silence. It showed that discomfort does not need to be dramatic to be real, that power does not need to be aggressive to be overwhelming, and that intention does not always cancel impact. At the same time, it raised an equally uncomfortable concern. In an era where accusations move faster than investigations, how does the industry protect accountability without destroying fairness? The answer is not simple, and perhaps that is the point. What this legal war truly revealed is that Hollywood is still learning how to handle human complexity in environments driven by money, image, and control. That progress does not come from perfect outcomes, but from uncomfortable conversations that refuse to go away. For Blake, this chapter becomes part of a larger narrative about voice and agency, not a victory story, but a boundary story. For Justin, it becomes a permanent shadow, not necessarily a conclusion, but a caution. And for the audience, it becomes something else entirely, a reminder that behind every polished press tour, every inspirational interview, and every carefully framed message, there are real people navigating systems that reward silence and punish exposure. This was never just about one film, or one set, or one disagreement. It was about how stories are told, who gets to tell them, and what happens when those stories collide in public. Hollywood will move on. It always does. New projects, new faces, new scandals. But this case will linger quietly, shaping contracts, policies, and conversations in ways that will never make headlines. And maybe that's its real legacy. Not outrage, not cancellation, but a slow, irreversible shift toward accountability that no longer depends on perfection, only on the willingness to confront discomfort before it becomes destruction. Because once the illusion breaks, it never fully reforms. And that may be the most powerful consequence of all.